Oh, May 6th. Oh my goodness. Thursday. May 6th.
Okay, we're on.
Welcome to this meeting of the Smith Falls Police Service Board for May 15th, 2024. I'm going to call the meeting to order and start with our land acknowledgement. On May 15th, 2024, we acknowledge that the sacred land which Smith Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We are grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might meet here today. We're also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smith Falls. We are mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile all the relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, be mindful of generations to come. For the public who's watching today, this is Police Week 2024. May 12th to 18th, 2024 has been designated this year's Police Week in Ontario. And Police Week was first observed in 1970 and coincides with the Peace Officers Memorial Day, recognized internationally on May 15th. This year's theme, Join Policing, Keep Ontario Safe, provides an opportunity to highlight the important role that police officers and police personnel play in community safety and how members of the community can take an active role in keeping Ontario safe by joining this rewarding profession. We want to use Police Week to demonstrate to Ontarians the value of the work our police officers and personnel do each day and encourage individuals to consider a career in policing. It's important to use Police Week to support our people and connect positively with all our communities. We want to recognize our police service, Acting Chief Ampey, her entire team, and our administrative personnel and civilian personnel for all they're doing to keep our community safe. And obviously that community first mantra carries strongly throughout Smith Falls. And we're proud of everything you do, and we appreciate the work that you do.
Thank you. We'll be doing coffee with a cop on Thursday between 12 and 2. And the public can stop by and have a free coffee at Starbucks. Yeah, they're hosting again, so.
Perfect. Thank you.
No beer at the tap house?
Okay, any additions to the agenda?
Just wanted to discuss in the addition the police auction that we just had.
Okay, I'll add
Bring
that.
up.
As new business C, I guess.
Yes.
Ask for motion to approve the agenda. Moved by Chris, seconded by Rob. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Any declaration of interest? Seeing none, we will make our step to move in camera. I'll need a motion to move in camera. The Smith Falls Police Service Board move in camera to discuss items pertaining to intimate, financial, or personal matters, or other matters to be disclosed of such a nature having regard to the circumstances, the desirability of avoiding their disclosure in the interest of any person affected or in the public interest outweighs the desirability of adhering to the principle that proceedings be open to the public in accordance with sections 35(4)(b) of the Police Services Act. Motion to move in camera, please. Moved by Chris McGuire, second by Chris Samir. All in favor? We're going to move in camera in the other room.
One or two?
What do you pay? I might be interested.
You don't want it. Believe me, you don't want it. For selling beer, people like you.
Okay, we're back.
Okay. We're back from our in-camera session, moving into back into our open session. I need a motion for approval of the minutes from the previous meeting of April 17th. Moved by Rob, seconded by Chris Samir. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. I don't believe we have any business arising from the previous minutes. So we'll move into our new business, the 2023 annual report. Thank you, Chief Empey.
So the annual report is complete. The one thing though that I'm still working on with the town finance person, as you know, there's been some changes there. And so he's still working on updating some of the grant stuff. So I want to have a full, proper update for you especially for the annual report that I noticed wasn't complete. There was some overtime that he forgot to include in our 2023 final. So we're just working on that part. But everything else is ready to go. So I would say by the end of this week, I'll have that report and be able to provide you the full annual report. But I just wanted to give you a quick overview. So I started at around page 16, just a list of all the training courses. I won't go through every little bit of the annual report. It's quite lengthy. We're going to have an online version and as well as a printed version for all of you and anyone that wants a copy as well. If you could scroll down, Steph. So some of our training. Oh, just keep going down to the next scroll. So just giving you some highlights of what we do, our comm center, our community involvement. If you just keep going down. Technology, what we've got in our cruisers, our DEMS, our ALPR, our in-car cameras, MTO, working on the NG911, highlights of the Smith Falls and District Crime Stoppers, their annual report and how they work collaboratively with our service and the importance of Crime Stoppers and their board. Again, our community involvement included a bunch of pictures that we do, some of our fundraising events that are done as well with Crime Stoppers. As you know, they attend a lot of our events. And just our community service in general and our positive engagement in the community. So we just highlighted a lot of our community involvement as well. Lots of pictures. Crime prevention and what we do out in our community, our calls for service. And if you could keep scrolling down. As well as our outreach. We did a section on intimate partner violence and what we do in working with our community partners in prevention and as well as compliance checks of our high-risk offenders, especially to do with intimate partner violence. Our sex offender registry as well, highlighting that. So here are our calls for service, comparators from last year to this year. Our calls for service overall are higher, and we're seeing a lot more complicated investigations as far as ones that are more time consuming than what we've had before. This is our full business quarterly report. As well, in the annual report, I included our service assisting outside agencies on calls. For example, OPP or other police agencies. We've attended Ottawa, assisted Ottawa Police with the convoy and with Canada Day. We've assisted Kingston with some of their events that go on, as well as Gananoque. So it just kind of highlights that as well. Because sometimes you hear OPP assisting us, but we also assist other services. So here's some of our crime rates and severity overall in our clearance of crimes of violence, property crimes, other criminal code and drugs. So we have 100% clearance rate for drug activity. Our crimes of violence is 80% back in 2022, more of 70% now. Property crimes are always on the lower end sometimes, because if you've got, say, one individual that does a lot of thefts, for example, we may not be able to prove that that individual has done, say, 25, but we could prove 6, but we'll clear it off as that individual being the one responsible, because they might admit to a number of things. You just sometimes can't prove that that's the one individual. Other criminal code offenses, bail violations, that kind of thing. Our mobile crisis response team, highlighting that as well, to let the public know what we do with our team, what our Health IM is and what it records and how it analyzes our calls for service, and a picture of our team. Again, our quarterly report for 2023 as well that we highlighted. Missing Persons Act and what we do under the Act. We also have this on our site as well as on our website. We have our 2 missing persons still on there, but that's the urgent demand. The collection of identifying information in certain circumstances has to do with carding and how officers approach the public and what information that they're seeking from the public. We didn't have any incidences where we unlawfully asked any member of the public for any information with respect to that. The use of force stats. So I highlighted this a little bit more than we used to do, to have our use of force instructors give us more of a fuller overview to the public on when our use of force was used and some of the incidences, for example, that the force was used. So if you want to just scroll down there. So for example, in 2023, some of the report types that they had and whether their firearm was pointed, whether their taser was utilized, whether it was pointed, and then the incidences to give an overview of what the incident was. That's all included in our annual report. Our use of force model, we also include it. Road safety, traffic initiatives, what we do in regards to our road safety and traffic. Sorry, these screens aren't very beneficial. Our RIDE annual report as well. We get the RIDE grant every year and utilize it primarily sometimes during the summer months. We'll do some rides as well as the holiday season. And our stats to do with our impaired driving. Our firearm training, what we do, our annual, every 12 months, the officers have to get qualified in firearms as well as use of force. An overview of our vehicle fleets that we have and what we've got in our cruisers and what we've sold to, that I'll bring up later on in regards to our auction. Our property and how we control our property and what's in our property and how it's logged according to ministry standards. Our public complaints, the status of our investigations with the OIPRD. We received 5 complaints this year, and that was a decrease from 14 complaints that we received in 2022. And these are the status of our investigations and the overview of what our investigations pertain to. And as you know, it's no longer OIPRD, it's now called LECA. It's the same similar process that the public does, and LECA is attached to our website on how to make complaints. And that the members, in accordance with secondary activities, members have to report to the chief of any secondary employment that they have. And these were the members that have secondary employment. For example, working in a restaurant, we have part-time staff that have secondary jobs as well. Special investigation unit, we had no cases that we had to report to the SIU in 2023. Traffic offenses gives you an overview, motor vehicle accident statistics, overview as well. Our crime stat incidents. So this is similar to what we talked about before with crime severity, our crime rate, that kind of thing. So this gives you an overview of crime rate, for example. To explain it simply is, for example, robberies are theft with violence. So in 2023, we had 6. So that increases the percentage of robberies to 500%. But when you're in a small service, 6 robberies compared to, say, in Ottawa is different. We didn't have any armed robberies, so anything to do with someone punches somebody in the face and steals some cash from them, that's deemed a robbery. So if you look at the whole picture, this is in smaller services, it looks like it's an exorbitant amount of percentage of change, but because you only have, say, 1 or 2, it ups our percentage of our rate of crime higher. For example, sexual assaults. Our sexual assault reporting went up 100%, which is actually a good thing because people are reporting sexual assaults more than they have in the past year. Criminal harassment, uttering threats, they went up as well. The one other thing to note is bail violations, breach probation and court order. We do a lot of proactive compliance checks, and that has increased. Again, it's about officers ensuring that our offenders are not in violation of their conditions by going to their home, making sure that they're at their residence, if they're on a condition to be at their residence, if they're on conditions to a curfew, that kind of thing. So that just kind of gives you an overview of the more major calls for service in our increase. So for example, in 2022, a sexual offense of invitation to sexual touching, there was no offenses reported in 2022, but we had 2 in 2023. So that brings up your percentage 200. So just to give you an example of our more significant calls in 2023. And that is our annual report. So that's going to be going out, like I said, it was done at the end of April, but then the finance realized that they had made an error. So I'm just waiting on them to complete that one expenditure page to get a full report out online and the printed copy as well. Any questions?
Yeah, thank you very much. Questions from the board? Just go back to the previous slide with the incidents. I just know like about 20% reduction in Mental Health Act.
Yeah.
So is that, so I guess like, what was it, 70?
The calls for service?
No, the incidents.
Yeah, okay, so we were down 26% change. So we had 476 mental health calls and we were down to 352.
Yes, a significant decline. Is that any, is that just sometimes things are different year to year, or is there anything that
Yeah,
was?
it's different year to year, and sometimes what I noticed for this year especially, so say you had a repetitive person that you were dealing with a lot more in 2022, they kind of we're starting to streamline, the team's starting to streamline ones that are repetitive callers to kind of put them into more in touch with Lanark County Mental Health, whether there was a psychiatrist or a psychologist, something more than that crisis response. So it's kind of been a bit of a shift with the ones that say you were getting multiple calls a week. They would increase your actual calls, and it still would be a call for an officer to go to. So the repetitive ones that weren't maybe necessarily in crisis but always felt that they had to call the police, about mental health, we're starting to streamline them into a different way so that they don't feel that they have to always call the police for...
So that reduction really a lot to do with work of MCERT and the ability
That's
to
right.
refer to
Absolutely.
there and get,
Yeah. And
get the
those
help.
repeat ones that aren't necessarily in crisis, but they always felt that they had to call the police repeatedly to have that kind of offset with the team, but more in with Lanark County Mental Health
Yes.
and getting them some different support than always feeling that they had to call us and the team. So
hopefully it's a trend that continues, and
I hope so. Yeah.
a reduction of 70 incidents means
Yeah.
more officer time for other things, I guess.
That's
So,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Great job.
Yeah.
And could some of those calls, like the way in which you're kind of explaining that you know there's new streamlines in place to kind of help bring down the calls for service, if you will, for those types of things. could it be, in turn the opposite, like you know, when you look at, I think it was drugs or something that went up, I'm just thinking,
25
like,
today.
would there be any correlation to, you know, the service making changes to the way in which they're investigating things so that they're getting more calls, but it's because they're actually getting more insight into how to act on these types of calls? Like, I'm just
Like-
wondering if there's any correlation to that as
For the drug stuff?
well,
Or
yeah,
for
or
anything?
robbery or any,
Like-
any kind of, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, now you're seeing, so I think I mentioned it before too, with everything seems to be a little bit more complicated. Like if, for example, we always just, you know, you did the drug entries, the drug warrants, but now there's children involved, there could be mental health involved, so we are engaging more than we used to. And I always see a correlation. The domestics, for example, too, we're seeing more of a correlation. So you're having to engage more, but it's all about preventative. It might be at the beginning more to do, but if you could just try and prevent, you know, a domestic, or reach out for the mental health component, or have something like, you know, that we never looked at before, then I do see, there always seems to be a correlation of mental health somewhere.
Yeah.
In
More
the
steps
calls
to be
that we're
taken.
seeing, more steps to
Yeah.
be taken for sure.
But
Yeah.
that's good. That's
Yeah.
growing, right? Like, we're learning.
Yeah, the unfortunate part is, we always say with the mental health funding, if they could get full-time funding, they could get a full-time staff. They're suffering too. We've lost staff members for the MCERT team because we don't have full-time funding. So even with this 3-year funding, that's going to help, but it doesn't give support to, first, they didn't recognize, you know, support for officer staffing, which I was hoping that they would, but it's also to have that staffing, you know, set a little bit more than the 3 years and the,
Better than a year, but not where it should
yeah, no, it's not, so.
be. Also noticing there's, I guess, 3 areas of criminal harassment, uttering threats, and domestic disturbance, which, I don't know, maybe just throw them all in the same basket to some extent, but all of them up significantly.
They are, yeah, and the criminal harassment too, it can't be taken lightly anymore either. So even the one element of someone driving by someone's house has to be investigated as a full domestic element, ensuring the safety of the person. Is there a fear? So there's more to criminal harassment as well than, and I'm going 10 years back, that we've changed as police in looking at the full picture. And I mean, that was really highlighted in our homicide. It was all about a criminal harassment case that police obviously weren't aware of at the time, but certainly we recognize with other cases that we want to ensure. So even if it's a matter of a partner calling all the time or driving by the house, that is a serious element of a domestic. So that sometimes maybe had been reported as just harassment. Well, it's criminal harassment. So we look at, it's just different way on we looking at crime severity, and the changes that we've all made across the province, and even here, is treating that as a severe crime and ensuring that it's reported and documented, just like an assault, for example, of a domestic. So, yeah.
Thank you. Further comments or questions? Okay. Moving on, budget.
So the April budget monitor, it looks good. We are riding high with the part-time, overtime, and as well as officer. We've had some sick leave of officers that we've had to backfill with members, and certainly do what we can. We've had even our community service officer, he's been working the road more than he's worked doing community service, as well as our sergeants. So just trying to ensure that we don't always have the overtime, but that we change shifts, for example. But including the staff has worked on making sure that the overtime isn't as high. But the last 2 weeks, the overtime was high. You'll see in time that it'll settle. We'll have new staffing available, and just building our numbers up. And again, this time of year, sometimes it is difficult with sick leave. The part-time wage, we had a recent resignation of a part-time dispatch, so we have 2 that we're hiring to get us back up to complement. We also had to deal with a short sick leave as well, filling in for that. Other than that, everything else looks fine. We've, I don't have anything else to report as far as any issues with the budget so far.
Questions or comments? Thank you. Police auction results.
Police auction went well. Big thanks to Sean Kogan and Aaron Tompkins. They did a lot of work. We used joint auction as we always have. And it was a successful auction. We raised over $10,000. The 2 cruisers that were sold were 103, 104. We stripped them down to nothing, so they're just a car. They were both sold, and the money proceeds from the sale goes back into the town, the capital assets of our portion of the budget. And then the remaining 2,000 and change goes back into our budget as well. So overall, it was over 10,000. We were able to clear out our back storage area, lots of bikes, lots of tools that were unclaimed. So yeah, it was a success. Yeah.
Thank you. Anything else? No? Okay.
Okay, the crime severity index.
Yeah, number 10.
The PDF one, please. So I just want to give a quick overview of our crime severity index from 2018 to 2022. The stats aren't out yet for 2023 fully until the summer, but just to kind of highlight of this, sorry, I'm just gonna, it's hard sometimes to read off of that. So if you look at the percentage of change of our severity over the last few years has gone down 22, almost 23%, and that's in our severity of violent crimes. That's changed as well to like 60% change. So we see more of an increase of our property crimes, but the violent crimes that have been reported in Smith Falls has gone down, but the property crimes has gone up. If you could scroll to the next one. So the severity of the crimes, and overall in Ontario, the severity of crimes has gone up, but property is down. So every municipality is different in what you are seeing. Obviously, if you look at larger municipalities, they're dealing with some serious gun violence, for example. Thankfully, we are not. The property crimes are always something that we'll see. We certainly see, depending on who's been released from custody, and some of the same characteristics that we'll see. The nice thing about policing a small service is we seem to know who's out there and what they're doing and where they're living, and kind of keep an eye on it. You know, give an example of the break-and enters that we saw into people's homes. It always takes time to gather the information and evidence, but once we do, we're on them. So you sometimes will always see an increase in property crimes, and then the full decrease when the person goes into custody, and then they get out of custody, because that's what always happens. And then we'll see the increase again, because they don't seem to learn their ways, whether it's we try through the R&J measures, like even for adults, like you've got alternative measures that they can put them through counseling, they can give them, you know, extra support instead of just jail, but for some of them that does not seem to work. So that just kind of gives a little brief overview, but I'll be able to, if you can scroll down the clearance rate for Smith Falls. So we still have the clearance rate of almost 80% for our violent cases, as well as the non-violent. We have 38% and a change of 8% in our clearance rate, to give you an overview on that. So, for example, as I mentioned earlier, if you look at property crimes or any of the non-violent cases, you might have, for example, a case of breaking into vehicles. You'll have one person, you might be able to prove 10, you might be able to clear off 20 of them, depending on, if they say that, yes, they did a number of them, they just don't remember where, or they're not reported. That's how we look at how our clearance rate looks at. Our violent percentage in our clearance rate for violent is around the 76%, which again across the province is we're similar to other places across the province as well. So I'll be able to get a better overview for 2023. Stats Canada doesn't come out with it until around the summer, like the full overview of clearance rates, for example, of that. So,
Can you explain what it means for the clearance rate? So in other words, is that a conviction or is that a
it's how we clear things in our stats. So if it's unfounded, founded, if it's cleared by charge. A lot of our cases, for example, we don't do unfounded unless it's proven that that whoever's reporting it, it's a completely false allegation, for example. But otherwise, we'll clear things as complete solved, which means that we've solved the case of the incident. It's cleared by charge, or it's ongoing, or that there's insufficient evidence to proceed, or that it's complete but it's unsolved. So if cases are unsolved, that's how it gets cleared. So it gets cleared internally. It then the stats get sent to Stats Canada, and then they do the full picture. But as I explained earlier with the annual report, for example, like say we had one homicide, that violent rate would go up 100%. If we had 6 robberies, although it's not a robbery with gun violence that you would see in other cities, it's still deemed a robbery. That then jumps our rate up high. But even though the person is known to us, and all those cases, it was somebody that knew the person, so it wasn't a stranger, it wasn't an armed robbery. So that picture isn't shown in Stats Canada. It just shows you our stats. So it makes a small municipality, it might look like we have a high crime rate, but we actually don't, because in a small municipality, 6 robberies is gonna jump it up high. But it's known people, or it could be drug related, or it could be, a partner, that kind of thing. Like friends, for example, somebody assaults another person and they assault them and take their money, that kind of thing. So we look at and for example, when we look at measurements, if you've got a high rate of break and enters, all of a sudden we have somebody that is breaking into a number of houses, we start looking at the areas, where is this happening, and saturating our resources to these certain areas and working on that. So it actually makes it beneficial for a small service, because we know the good and the bad, and we know who's out there, and we know the areas to watch for, or we know the people to watch for. And so when we look at these rates, or we look at these problems, I always look at our stats monthly and I see, okay, what's going on? We get daily briefings. If in the briefing we're seeing, okay, all of a sudden people are starting to report break and enters, then we know, okay, there's a problem. Let's look at where it's happening and what we can do. So it always is a monthly measure that we look at, and even a daily measure or a weekly measure, because if I get daily briefings and I start seeing that there's an increase in something, then we're going to act on, okay, there's a problem in this area. When we know certain persons in custody, we know that there's not going to be as much break and enters into vehicles. It's sad to say, but that's what we see sometimes with a pattern on some of the people. And when you get the public that know who these people are because of the press releases and that kind of thing, you just know that there's repetitive offenders that they just, every time they get out, they act up again. So yeah. Any questions?
Questions, comments? Just one thing is just to notice and look, and just compare the clearance rates for our service compared to provincially. Certainly, especially on the violent, we're probably 25% ahead of the provincial average.
Yep.
So again, as you said, it's a familiarity within a small community and drawing
It
on
is.
who the bad guys are.
Yeah, it's, sometimes when you see what goes on in other communities, you just, you think that you live in this community, and we do all we can to stay on top of what is going on, and we certainly do, so.
Yeah, and overall, even the non-violent, I mean, 2022 we're 38%, 27.5% provincially.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so I think overall we're a busy service, lots to do.
We're busy, yeah.
But,
We're busy, proactive,
effective.
which is a good thing. We a lot of times don't wait. We, you know, if we have offenders that we know are high risk, we're going to pay attention to them. So we don't wait sometimes to wait for them to do something. Usually we're checking on them on a pretty regular basis. So
Okay. Any further? No?
Benefits of community policing, right?
yeah, community policing.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, sorry, staff managers report. The PDF one. So we thanked our communicators and of course my admin assistant that I couldn't do my job without, staff, and certainly all our communicators that do a fantastic work behind the scenes. Our officers could not do their jobs without our communication staff. They help out with the paperwork, they help out with the calls for service as far as getting us there safely and ensuring our safety. So big thanks to them. Couldn't do our job without the men and women that work with us. Busy month in April, we had 658 calls for service. Some noteworthy calls for service that there was 101 criminal charges that we laid past month. Mischief, damage to property, there was extensive amount of graffiti on monuments, businesses, and schools. The male was charged by OPP as he targeted myself and other members of our service. So I had another service do the investigation, and they are continuing on with the investigation. We had 26 intimate partner violence calls, 5 assaults, 1 break and enter, 9 warrants, 12 compliance checks, 3 sexual assault reported, and we had 26 mental health related calls with a 28% apprehension rate and a 1 hour, 40-minute average wait time. Our patrol traffic enforcement, we had 14 collisions, 29 complaints, 49 vehicle stops, 19 charges that were laid under the Highway Traffic Act, charges related to speeding, driving under suspension, failing to wear seatbelts, stunt driving, red light, fail to stop, following too close. 3 charges laid under the Compulsory Insurance Act. 2 were regarding drivers not having insurance. Some alcohol traffic related. We had 1 operating while prohibited and 1 with open liquor in their vehicle. 7 hours of foot patrol, 6 hours in the school, and 5 hours community service. Our CISO criminal investigative branch, they're doing a sexual assault investigation, the graffiti investigation, missing persons investigation. We had use of force training, and they also helped cover the road. Our community service officer was working on the auction, but also participating in the presentations with our Big Brothers and R&J at local schools, and that was to do with our POC grant that we supported them with. And also worked the road and use of force training that we did. So all other events that we did, we had our annual use of force training, interviewing for recruit position. Sergeant Pellet attended an annual audit conference, and I had 1 officer on a surveillance course. And that is it. That is it for my report. Thanks, Steph.
Comments or questions?
Busy.
Busy month with training and yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. We're down to next meeting date, June 19th, 8 o'clock.
Works.
Here. Any final closing comments before I ask for motion for adjournment? No, motion for adjournment moved by Chris Samir, seconded by Chris McGuire. All in favor? Stand adjourned. Thank you.
Okay, I'll just wait till we're off.
We've done pretty good time today.
Oh, excellent. I'll just wait till he says that we're off.
I don't know how to mute it.
Oh, we're clear. I know.
Yesterday.
I just,
See, these ones don't mute. Okay. No. Does it? Well, the light doesn't change. So like,